Good morning. I'm Andrianne Philippou, the editor of Lube Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to the next in our series of Lube Media podcasts in conversation with. And today my very special guest is Thomas Norrby, the technical manager and senior lubricant specialist at Nynas AB. Nynas was founded in 1928 and is a specialty oils and bitumen products company. And one of the things that intrigues me most, Thomas, when I started looking at your role and having known you for the last 4 years as I have done, is how when you were appointed to your role at Nynas, you said that your support for the lubricants industry would remain in words and deeds. What exactly did you mean by this, and why is it that lubricants are so important?
Well, first, a very good morning to you, Andrianne. So lovely to be with you here in this short interview. Well, in words and deeds, what I like to do, I like to talk about lubricants and base oils. I'm basically a teacher at heart, and I really enjoy, figuring out better ways to use the naphthenic oils, use them for the benefit of the blender, of the end user, and, enjoying finding those little morsels of new facts and hints and trying to bring them across, to further the use of naphthenic oils, of course, but also to help product designers to do a better job. And during almost 25 years I've been in the industry, lubricants industry, base oil industry, I began to zoom in on some areas that I feel are even more important than others, such as solvency, for example. How important it is to take account of solvency in the formulation, and I'm happy to talk about that. And I like to go around and spread the word about
it. So essentially, it's fair to say that you're a technical influencer, effectively. Is that how you'd like to put
sure. I'll have that printed on my next T-shirt. Technical influencer. Yeah, sure. That's great.
I think, clearly, in the 4 years I've been involved in the industry, you are a formidable presence at live events, in your presentations, very clearly in demand and sought after. But your original path was actually academia, wasn't it? You started off as a university professor and lecturer. So how did you transition from the life of the academic through to the industrial sector where you are now?
Well, it was really quite easy. I was offered a job when I got my PhD in organic chemistry about 25 years ago. I felt I wanted to go into industry and put it to some use. And then I wound my way back into academia 3 or 4 years later after sort of leaving the university. I was back at another university in another discipline than in machine engineering. I had discovered, I had been informed about tribology, and I thought that was something really interesting. So I was offered a chance to become a adjunct professor up in Luleå at the University of Technology there. And I threw myself at this completely new, for me, completely new topic. And then I've managed to, let's say, ride that wave and straddle the non-existing borderline then between university and applied technology. So I've been very fortunate to be able to play around in the field of applied chemistry and applied lubrication science then for a very long period of time. I didn't really see that coming, but, it happened.
So when you stepped into the industrial sector, did you miss anything about the academic life? Were you able to amalgamate the two? I mean, did you mentor younger scientists, or when I say younger, I mean less experienced scientists in that world? How did you bridge the two areas of academia and industry?
Well, obviously I was happy to move into industry, but then I was also happy to sort of grab the handrail of science and academia again when it was offered, and rather soon. It is the scaffolding of the thinking in industrial settings as well. I mean, most of the senior researchers are of course highly educated and trained scientists.
Yeah.
There's a lot of give and take between the application studies, also fundamental studies, and the practice that we do in industry. So there's quite a lot. It's not that uncommon actually that people have a foot here and a foot there.
Right.
Some academics start companies, other join companies and join back in academia.
So it was a natural sort of progression, really, wasn't it? I suppose. And
I would say if you're fortunate enough to be hired by a very open-minded and progressive company like I was, they supported me, fully, and I would say they sort of barely knew me. I just started, I worked for a few years, and obviously I made some kind of positive impression, so I was given the chance. But there's a lot of smart people and smart managers that are good at developing people, at developing relationships, between industry and academia and so on. And some universities are really good at it too. I mean, you have to have them that. Some schools and some departments are very successful, and that's because they want to. They put their mind to it, and they see a value, and they also think it's fun.
Okay, so that's great. I wanted to move on to a little bit about Nynas as an organisation and its vision to be a global leader in naphthenic products. I've always been intrigued about the properties of naphthenic versus paraffinic oils. Never really understood them, if I'm completely honest. But can you explain to help me understand a little bit more about the difference between the value and properties of naphthenic versus paraffinic oils?
Yeah, sure. I thought you'd never ask. Naphthenic base oils are not really uncommon. They're one of the big four, I would say, base oils, accounting for almost 10% of the global base oil volume. Naphthenics are also not primarily locked to the development of automotive engine oils, which gives a huge freedom of design of the naphthenic oils. The needs of the automotive industry has driven transformations over decades, hugely important. But and naphthenics are also important for the let's say, engine oil applications. The naphthenic oils are available over a vast viscosity range, much larger than a typical passenger car engine oils. And it's very useful for industrial lubricants and process oils especially. So we have a wide array of viscosity, different solvencies for different viscosities and availability, which is free from constraints of whatever applies to the automotive segment.
Okay, so essentially they're very adaptable and very versatile in a simplistic sense.
Yeah, and they contain a lot of different properties that can be expressed by the way you process them and by the way you sort the molecules and transform them in the various refining processes. So they can end up with many different phases, and they each have a perfect fit in some application or another. And that's what's so fun about working with naphthenics, is that we cover a lot of bases with these base oils. We do process oils and components for chemical industry, and we do specialty lubricants like greases and metalworking fluids. And then we have electrical industry and tires and rubber. So I mean, it's a very broad spectrum.
Is that part of what keeps you interested and focused in your particular role, that there is constant reformulation or innovation within the chemistry that keeps things interesting and current? Is that part of what your passion is built around in terms of the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, we have multiple moving targets. We have chemical legislation. We have prices and value of products. We can try to target a certain industry, a certain part of the adhesives industry for CMI or silicone sealants. We can look at it and say, I think we can use naphthenics here. I think maybe we should have some of this business, and we can sort of try to dig into it. And it seems to be ever changing, and it's like many topics. I mean, you're interested in ants, then you discover there are different kinds of ants, and then there are different kinds.
Yes, yeah.
And you can dig into it, and of course, from a company point of view, we need to maintain the holistic approach. But really, what we're good at is playing with the molecules that we get, depending on the season, depending on the needs of the refineries. We will get a certain type of distillates and then a certain type of base oils, and then we have to figure out what's the most valuable use for this. And we can always go back and challenge ourselves, Is this really the best we can do? No, I think we can do better. So we try to reinvent and attack new applications, but we also go back to the other ones and say, can we do this in a better way? So it's very entertaining, and it fast moving in a sense, and we can never be done. I mean, this is
no, it's a constantly evolving, isn't it, the whole industry. So what would you say have been the most significant changes in terms of innovation that you've seen just in the 25 or so years that you've been a part of the industry? And do you think we are moving into an arena where basically it's the drive for a more sustainable approach that is going to continue to help evolve those formulations and to innovate within the industry? Is that how we're going to keep moving forward?
Yeah, I would say since 98, when I started out, I would say almost everything has happened. We still talked about the things that weren't Group 1 base oils as unconventional base stocks. The rise of Group 2 base oils in the Americas, and the new players in the Group 3 field in Europe and in Asia, of course, have grown to tremendous size in the automotive, driven by the needs of automotive engine oils. So the unconventional base stocks are no longer unconventional, of course. We've seen the emergence of commercial scale GTL, gas to liquid, in the Shell projects. And that happened also during sort of pretty long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. So also amazingly big strides in the performance of industrial and automotive engine oils, longer drain intervals, better stay grade behavior. It goes on and on. I would say that working with finished lubricants in total loss applications, like mobile hydraulics and so on, early on put me on the track on sustainable lubricants, where I worked a lot with biodegradable lubricants and so on, right when I started back in 98. Mm-hmm. And of course, the perspective on that has changed completely. I mean, we even made like forecast and mind mapping, saying that now people think about local pollution and spills as the problem, but in a generation, everybody will know about global warming, and climate will be a huge issue. Of course, that's where we are now.
Yeah, indeed. And I think there's going to be so much more change as we move forward. It's almost as if the next 20 to 25 years are going to be, I think, much more telling than probably the last 200 years, really, in terms of innovation that we can expect. So what more do you think is coming? I mean, I've just asked you before, do you think it's life imitating science, or is science imitating life? What do you think is going to be the sort of the future?
Well, obviously something that we're all very busy with these days would be all the issues around the electrification of the automotive drivetrain and all the transformations that we envision for mobility, for society, for power generation. I see a very strong drive to net zero by 2050. I mean, there's a lot of players across the industries that are really gunning for that. Those will require, all those changes will require a lot of innovation and a lot of changes. But I think that lubrication engineering, as I sometimes say, will remain a full contact sport with reality and with the applications. And it will be very interesting times the next 25 years of my career in the industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we will see maybe more important changes. I think maybe back in 98 it was a little bit more innocent in a sense. We were working on emission targets for what was then known as the regulated emissions, carbon monoxide and particles and NOx and so on. And all of that could be solved in a really good way. But then there was a growing awareness of what was then called unregulated emissions, meaning carbon dioxide and water, basically. And that, of course, now has in a role reversal, maybe we have forgotten that we solved a lot of the technical issues and a lot of the pollution problems that we had before. Now the modern cars are, they hardly put out any pollutants in the classical sense. And all of that progress is sort of forgotten in a sense, because now it's only energy efficiency.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? It's as if whatever we've done it's just there, but it's kind of not acknowledged for, the dramatic benefits that's sort of offered us. But it's almost, we have to still carry on, and sustainability is very much about, making more change. And obviously, perhaps we're getting to a point where, because we are such a global society, and we have such immediate access to information, constant, current information, that we're just never catching up on ourselves almost. So there is always that sustainability being at the top of everyone's agenda, and how much more can we do to benefit and to stop climate change, etc., etc. So yes, it's a really interesting question. I mean, in terms of Nynas and how Nynas is incorporating the drive and the need to be more sustainable in its approach, in its product development, in its culture, do you see right across the industry that organisations are having to take this very much more seriously and make real changes? Is that very much more pressing now than ever before?
Well, I mean, it's push and pull. It's also a huge opportunity. We see now demand and a curiosity about other types of solutions that we haven't seen. We see a willingness to try new technology, if it's bio-based or biodegradable or with a better sustainability profile. There are a whole lot of new questions that our customers ask us. Can you do this in a better way? We can set ourselves the targets. Of course, and we do that. We've done that for a long time, of course, to try to improve. But the real new chances that come up is when you have this change of mindset. Maybe we should try something differently. So we see a lot of appetite for let's say new inventions, new products, and of course that's very exciting. And of course that creates a lot of hope in the organization. If we do this right, and if we can drive this change, then maybe we can be part of the future industry landscape. And I think that there are a few organizations that sit back and think that we're so good that we don't have to do anything any different. I think if you do that as a company, you could be very, very dead in a decade or two. So.
Do you think that part of this new appetite that you mentioned, which I think is really true and apparent, but do you think that is enhancing organisations kind of collaborating more and consolidating, their knowledge and working in a direction sort of together as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some very concrete examples, the way people pool and use life cycle data, for example. Share the inventory and the data. This is what we think the impact of this product has. So these are the properties. You work around labeling and eco-labeling schemes. When you try to explain across the value chain, you can't say everything all the time. You have to say, can we agree that if we declare the product under this or that eco-label, we agree that that's a step direction we want to take? And people say yes, get on with it. So the collaboration is ever more sophisticated. And of course, anyone who's producing something wish to think that their product, just their baby, is the most beautiful ever, and it's the most valuable product ever, and you'll have the best sales and the best margins ever. And I think that many people abhor commoditization. You don't really want to be part of that. So we think this is a great way to differentiate, to make an impression, to make a first impression in new industries, to make a new impression in old industries where we are incumbent. And it drives a lot of aspiration and hope. And I think also it's very important for, let's say, employer branding to bring people to the industry. Each generation that has to be replaced. We need better people. We need smarter people. We need people that can think about those things and communication as well, right? To get it out.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting. And just in your answer then, I think you've already satisfied my next question, if you like, where I've just said, is this the most challenging or the most exciting time to be a chemist or engineer? Because clearly what you're saying is, with the pace of change and innovation going on in the industry, This is absolutely a really exciting time to be at the forefront of change.
Lots of new doors are flung open, and doors that weren't there before.
Yes.
You know, parts of the building, parts of the vehicle that didn't exist 5 years ago. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in the air.
Yeah, very interesting. So, okay, so moving forward, we've had a couple of years of bleak times, really, where we haven't seen much of each other in the industry, and, you know, we haven't been able to meet up for live events. How have you managed to maintain your kind of focus and your positivity? Because it's quite sort of static, isn't it? The virtual life that we've had to engage in over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I've missed the real live events more than I like to admit. I would say I really enjoy the open and curious phase of the industry, and how willing people are to share their excitement about technology and the willingness to teach and to learn. And it's so much easier, you know, when you have the real natural contact. Of course, nowadays everyone can do a decent job in a Teams meeting, in a Zoom meeting. We have learned how to do, you know, conferences and in a fair way, but for any sort of natural born lecturer, it's very frustrating. You don't have a script normally. You go into the lecture hall.
Tell me about it, Thomas.
When you kind of give a technical paper and you start, and then you look at people. If they look happy, you go on. If they look really sad and confused, then you have to go back and try again. And therefore, it's been a huge challenge for me to have. For example, I do some lectures for university classes when I have 30 or 40 students on Zoom and their cameras are off and I haven't even met them, right? So, and I still have to sort of try to get across, and that has been really, really tough. But, you know, we have to do what we have to do, and we have learned a lot about what we can do with digital tools as well. So, I mean, some of these things, some of the benefits we will keep. And we've learned to appreciate really, really the limitations also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been quite an interesting sort of learning curve for so many over the last 2 years. And obviously, you know, we're not quite out of it all yet, but seemingly we are beginning to have much more in the real physical events coming through, which is so welcome, I think, for everyone, to be honest. I'm curious, because obviously you've been involved in this industry for a quarter of a century, from what you've said, sort of 25 odd years. But what do you think might have intrigued you enough to develop, you know, your career path in a different capacity? What would have been your other passions that you might have developed and gone into?
Oh, that's an interesting thought, of course. Well, my favorite things are science and teaching and music. So now I'm doing science and teaching. Maybe I would have done a little bit more music.
But you do music, don't you?
I'm amateur choral singer and so on. And, you know, for years and years. I started in the boys' choir when I was 8 or something. So I could have done early music, medieval, baroque, perhaps learn to play some instrument really well. That's something that I could have done. But I do it as a hobby. But you know, it's better that way, I think.
Yeah. So with your academic and your industrial sort of knowledge, really, what would you say to young students who are considering coming into this industry? How would you engage them, or what would you ask them to consider before maybe embarking on either strands or the whole industrial package, really? What would you say to them?
Well, yeah, that's another of my favorite pastimes, to try to, I wouldn't say lecture, but try to hire young people and students. Yeah. Well, the fascinating world that we live in is, of course, there for their taking. So get in there and get involved. Pick a topic that you're excited about. You know, you might very well get what you wish for. So you should wish wisely. Study and work hard so you get any good at it. And at that point, it does not really matter what you have picked, because if you're any good at it, people will notice, and that will open doors for you. I've always enjoyed the applied sciences. Even when I was doing my PhD, we were trying to do something that might have some relation to application. There are many, pure forms of science that are also important. There are lots of people that do that, theoretical studies of different kinds. That's also valuable. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? If I want to get out there and bang things together and see what happens, then of course it doesn't get any more applied than high-tech industry. So, if you think that's what you want to do, you should do it. If you don't know if you like it, you should try it. You can always change. Like my first job, I didn't really know too much about the industry, but I was offered a job and I thought, well, I'll take it. And if doesn't suit me, if I don't like it, I can just move on. And I ended up staying 17 years in my first company. So, just get on there and get dirty, but pick something that you're really interested in, because you will get stuck to it. If you think of yourself or what you do, you like publishing and writing and so on, and so you do that. Hopefully, the purpose of higher education is to give you the tools and the momentum to maybe position you in the enviable position of actually having, being able to make a few decisions for yourself. I would like to do this. I would like to contribute here.
Yeah,
I have the tools and I have the ambition. So I would say follow your heart and your mind and do it well, and then things will sort itself out. Yeah.
And essentially, with that thought, really nothing is ever wasted, is it? Because it just teaches you that it's not necessarily what you wanted. So then you can leave that and move on to something else that you can try again. And I think that's a great attitude. It's about finding what's important and what you love, and just working with that, really, because then it's not really about work. It's about doing what you love. So,
yeah, and the advice to young people is, of course, that life is both long and short.
Yes.
You think that you have to have a ready-made plan. You get your first degree when you're like 20 or something, but you don't have to. You have to realize very quickly that that's just the first step. That will put you somewhere, and then from somewhere you can get to some other place.
Yeah.
So you're both a bit in a hurry because there's so much that you want to do, but also you have all of your life in front of you, right? So you're
That's right.
Not in that kind of hurry. You're in a good kind of hurry. You want to get out and do something. So a very important piece of advice that I heard from my late father-in-law is that it's very important that you know something. If you know something, if you know how to build ships, you can build ships. If you know how to sail, you can sail ships. If you're a doctor, you can be a doctor and see if you want to do that. But you need to know something. You need to show excellence in something. But it doesn't really matter what it is, right?
I think that's the perfect place to stop, Thomas, and I think it's a very sound bit of advice. I think as parents as well, we're always trying to encourage our children to have
that's another blogger,
Should we do that?
Yeah, we do that for the next one. Our advice on parenting.
Yeah, exactly.
Had 0 listeners, but okay.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy listening to this when the podcast is uploaded. But thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me.